Well, welcome back to another nonsensical review. In today's review, we are going to be taking a look at JLR of Jonathan Lee Rich's Investigates and Bullhorn Betty. This will hopefully be able to show a pattern of their behaviors, how similar they are, and how, unfortunately, parents of missing children or victims of heinous crimes are weaponized and used between creators for personal dislike or drama. This also includes clips from people like TikTok Tony. And in true nonsense fashion, it will be their words, their actions, their behaviors. Please listen to this with an open mind and open ears. Buckle up.
JLR Investigates, boots on the ground. Come on in. We're going to talk about the Sebastian Rogers case, my thoughts, and put some information out there for all of you to hear. Come on in, everyone. Continuous coverage. Sebastian, Wayne, Drake, Rogers.
JLR recorded this video on August 10th, 2024, after the interview on CourtTV with Vinnie Politan, Seth Rogers, and Tony Mathis. I wish YouTubers would stop streaming while driving.
Well, we do have some clues out there. Particularly, I put the title of this video, Seth's Devices Seized. Seth Rogers, Katie Proudfoot, Christopher Proudfoot. A lot of strange things about this case. And I believe with this case, there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of information that is being omitted from the parties.
JLR mentioning the misinformation that has been put out there is extremely ironic, considering he has been the source of a lot of that misinformation. JLR proudly states he runs one of the biggest Facebook groups in regards to the Sebastian Rogers case, which has been the source of many of the rumors, speculation, wild theories, disinformation, and misinformation in this case.
I think a lot of people are not telling the truth here, and they need to come clean. There are a lot of people centered around Sebastian's disappearance that are not telling the public the truth. They're omitting information and they're hiding things and not telling people the backstory.
Sebastian went missing February 26, 2024, and is still currently missing. This is currently an ongoing investigation by law enforcement. Sumner County is the lead investigative agency on this case. TBI, FBI, Secret Service, and so on have assisted in this case. And it always shocks me that people think the public is entitled to know everything going on in these cases. But as we are all aware, if they can't figure out the backstory, they will just create a backstory to fill in the gaps.
On a lot. Now think about this, folks. Seth has admitted out of his own mouth that authorities still consider him a suspect. He didn't really say suspect, but
Seth himself has stated that he was a suspect and has not been cleared numerous times on multiple streams. Here is a clip from August 7th, 2024, which is the most recent interview that Seth and Tony have done. It was on CourtTV with Vinnie Politan.
From your perspective, what are the lingering questions that you see in this case as well?
Well, if you're talking about that situation specifically, Vinny, I mean, clearly she was the last person that was seen with him. There has been no evidence that he ever left the house on his own. So in my mind, what would be the opposite of him leaving the house on his own? It would be leaving the house with somebody. Well, the only somebody, admittingly, by Katie that was in that house was hers. So clearly we have some questions there. But my bigger question as Seth's spokesperson, and where I would ask CourtTV to give us some assistance is, we have video evidence that shows that Seth was at work. We've had all of his electronic devices that have been seized and dumped. We'd like to know why Seth still hasn't been cleared, or what they might need from Seth and or myself to get him cleared.
So they have not cleared? I didn't realize that. I just didn't realize that was the situation. So
not at all.
So my guess is if they haven't cleared him, that may explain some of the lack of communication that is going back and forth in this case.
Good possibility. But what more do you want from me? I was at work. I was video camera from 6 p.m. till after 7 a.m. the next morning. My son should be with me right now. He should be in this house, and I should not be looking for him. Tell me where. I don't gain anything from this. This is not funny. The fact is I'm looking for my son. He's not here. Y'all took my electronics. What more do you want? Do they need my bank records?
There will be some strong opinions in the chat about statements made from Seth, but please be mindful that multiple things can be true at once. He can be the parent of a missing child, and we can give empathy for that. He can also be a part of the misinformation that has continued to flow in this case. Seth is not the focus of this video, but I will be using clips of Seth's own statements to correct some of JLR's misinformation and spins of narratives that, in my opinion, JLR was a big part of creating from the start. And for those of you that don't know, Tony, Seth's spokesperson, has been another problematic character in this entire situation, in my opinion. But you don't have to take my word for it. I will give you examples as we go on. JLR was contacted by Seth Rogers and asked to come film his searching of his son in March. TikTok Tony did not enter the picture until the end of April, beginning of May. He made his first YouTube appearance in the beginning of May on the Pascal show.
You can have them. I don't understand what I have to do to get cleared.
And as far as the mention of Seth's bank records, I'm sure the TBI, FBI, Sumner County has access to all of that. And yes, I'm sure the chat is already talking about it, but the GoFundMe and the Cash Apps that have been made for Seth since Sebastian went missing, neither one are in Seth's name.
We're willing to do anything to get it cleared, Vinny.
Go ahead, Tony.
There are resources.
Yeah, we're willing to do anything to work with them to get him cleared, because it does allow us to bring in more resources once he's clear. And if the video evidence, the phone data, and whatever else they may need isn't enough, then we'd simply like us to tell them, why is it that he hasn't been cleared? He did a polygraph test with a well-known FBI polygrapher that Nancy Grace set up, and he passed that with flying colors. So,
we're out of time, unfortunately. Tony, I'm sorry I have to cut you off there.
They haven't cleared him, and they have his devices. We're talking almost 180 days.
The upcoming is a clip from March 18th, 2024 from Terry Lynn's channel. Seth himself talks about being cleared by the TBI and also his phone.
Typically, TBI doesn't clear anybody until until the investigation is done. I'm just now getting them to Margin Gun Kelly 420. I don't know. I know they took all of our phones. They had mine for 12 hours.
Since this tragedy happened, and you apparently doesn't have some of the devices back. What devices? We've heard computers. I've heard phones out people's mouth. Nintendo Switch. What else? But the question is, what is in those devices that piques law enforcement's interest?
As you heard Seth himself state, his phone was returned. As far as Sebastian's devices go, such as the Switch, I am unsure of the status of that.
And there's a lot of information that's out there that is not put out there when it comes to this case, particularly when Seth speaks. He's with Tony Mathis, a guy from Oklahoma, who I say is no good. Apparently, law enforcement agrees that Tony Mathis is no good. Law enforcement is not giving Tony Mathis, a crane guy, a criminal that has numerous charges for writing bad checks.
JLR and Tony have had a weird back and forth for quite some time. What's sad is they are using a missing child to continue their personal drama at this point. And I will be showing some clips of why that has escalated. However, there is other reasons why law enforcement is not working with Seth. And that came directly from TikTok Tony, which there will be upcoming clips of. People watch JLR and think, oh, he's changed, he's on the up and up. If you don't realize how sneaky and sly he is, well, you're about to see a little bit more. JLR also had conflict with the United Cajun Navy. Shocker, right?
They'll never give him information. Considering the uproar that happened 30 days ago with this case, with all this debacle about Sebastian being seen on surveillance during the morning hours of February 26th, and Sebastian communicating with Katie Proudfoot's family, side of the family, who are registered SOs.
And once again, JLR throwing some shade at Tony. But he's right in this circumstance. Tony did create an entire shit show of misinformation on TikTok. Please note the information that you are about to hear in the upcoming clips is not factual information, but this is just one of the many cycles of misinformation and how it flows.
It's you, Tony. Seth has not asked directly to law enforcement or anything. When was the last time Seth pressured law enforcement for answers, other than not throwing out the PI? I should say.
Seth talks to Bobby Simmons. I don't know what the nature of those calls is, and quite honestly, until Stephen brought me this information and somebody else brought me some information last night, I haven't been involved in any of the communication with law enforcement, because at this point, that's not what Seth has asked me to do. So, I don't have those answers, but I know when he got this information, definitively, it was not anything he had ever had or knew about.
I think that we should, us as people that are wanting Sebastian found, pressure the shit out of him.
Yeah. There has been a lot of changes in this TikTok group of sorts. I like to call them the TikTok twits. Stephen Crabtree is no longer part of their team and has separated himself and has been speaking out against Tony. But this is to highlight how Seth's team has, in my opinion, intentionally caused misinformation and confusion in Sebastian's case. At one point in time, JLR was Team Seth also. Well, actually, in my opinion, JLR is team whatever he can cause the most chaos and confusion in.
And then, Stephen, did they tell you that they had information that Sebastian was in contact with Katie's mom?
No, I wouldn't say
Where did
that.
information come from?
Where did that? Tony had that. Tony had that. Tony did. And what is everybody in the comments? Everybody's saying something about a letter.
I'm so confused.
Yeah, what's the letter?
And this is just one small example, but where JLR mentioned this specific incident, I figured it would be good to revisit this.
What
Where's
letter?
that?
Tony, do you know anything about? Everybody in the comments is talking about a letter. Do you know anything about a letter?
I think they're talking about a text. We got information that Sebastian was texting Katie's mom the night before he went missing.
The text. Okay. Do we have any idea what that text said?
He was texting her about his incredible breakfast he had that day that you all heard Katie talking about.
Is he normally in contact
That's
with
so
her?
weird. I was going to say that is so odd, because I thought that there was no communication on that part of it.
Tony, was it standard? Was Sebastian in communication or frequent communication with Katie's mom?
Not according to what we were told, but clearly we know now that's not true.
And kind of disturbing considering her criminal history.
To my knowledge, Tony has never mentioned the source of who he got this information from. But as you all know by now, this was not factual whatsoever. And Tony just threw it out there like it was. Meanwhile, there is actually a missing child. And this is the biological father's PR man doing this type of damage and misinformation spreading.
Okay, Tony. So can you give a recap, please? Because like I said, there's a bunch of new people in here that didn't hear what was going on.
Yes, ma'am. So we got, now y'all know where the information came from. As you could tell, I was trying to protect certainly him, but we got information today that, last night we got information that Sebastian was actually communicating with Katie's mom the night before he went missing. We got information from law enforcement today that there was actual footage of Sebastian on the 26th, and we thought that the last footage they had was on the 25th, so we know now they've got additional footage.
I love how Tony tries to do this little spin here, but factually speaking, no, Sebastian was not in contact with Katie's mom. And Stephen Crabtree, who was a part of Seth's team at the time, had a conversation with law enforcement. Potentially he misunderstood the conversation, but then he misrepresented the conversation. And of course, Tony and team just ran with it all over. This was all part of their pressure campaign on law enforcement at that time.
The biggest thing I think is that we got information from them that they had a theory the first 72 hours, and after 72 hours, that theory took a 180-degree turn, and that's what I think was the biggest information.
And once again, Tony is drawing conclusions off of a misrepresented conversation between Crabtree and law enforcement.
What do you think is the biggest information? Which part do you think is the biggest new information, Tony? Sorry, I missed that.
Let me bring
Body?
Because we went backwards, and when we looked at the information, it said that the last sighting, or the last date was on the 26th, somewhere on what is it, Court Drive, or wherever, the street name, not the house, not that location, which is where we started the question. There has to be some type of footage after the house, or for them to say that it was somewhere on
TPI poster. I said it from the beginning. It says he was last seen on February 26th in the area of Stafford Court. I made like 37 videos about this. I knew they had fucking footage of him. I knew it.
Hi, Bobby.
And this is just one prime example of why it's so important to be factual about your conversations with law enforcement, or the fact that random strangers shouldn't be calling law enforcement and trying to interject themselves into an active, open investigation of a missing child, potentially putting the child at further risk or danger. And once again, as you all know, none of this was factual from jump.
I knew it.
Body's right. Mm-hmm. So what do you think this means? What does everybody like? So what? Let's have it. What does this mean? What do you guys think this means?
I'm telling you, I think he left on his own. I really do.
You think he left on his own?
Well, I'll tell you why I don't think that. I think that they thought that the first 72 hours, but for them to say they had a 180-degree turn after that, I don't think that they believe that anymore.
Who did they say that to?
I didn't hear that part.
Steven.
Yo.
Gosh, this is just pissing me off. This is wild to me that they are telling me this, Steven.
I asked the question, was this a criminal investigation or not? He said that information has already been put out there. And I said, what do you mean by that? The TBI spoke about this already. I said, I've seen something, but it didn't mean it was factual. I thought it was coming from hearsay. Well, he said, I could tell you that in the first 24 hours, it was a runaway. After that, it turned into a missing case. Then he said, I can tell you that 72 hours into this, we had a whole nother direction we were going. We started collecting footage from all areas that we can look at with all cameras to see what we could come up with, to see whether he really walked off or somebody got him. He said, a lot of the cameras were actually, we had a lot of good camera footage in the area. There was a lot of people that brought that forward, right? And he said, so that's right, that everybody not coming forward, that's right. That's funny because Tony confirmed that just then. I've kept that to myself, actually. So the people had came forward. The only thing that was that was late in coming forward, and it's sad, for whatever reason, the Worsham stuff. Those people were 2 weeks later. And again, I don't even know. I've tried to ask that. Nobody will tell me.
But they're still not confirmed. They still have not confirmed that it's a criminal case. They've actually said the opposite, that it's not a criminal case yet.
As of today, August 12th, 2024, this is still an open investigation. But no, TBI has confirmed it is not a criminal investigation at this point in time. Since JLR brought up Tony in the very beginning of this live stream, I figured let's just put it out there, some examples of the misinformation and problems that Tony has created, because JLR is correct on that. But just keep in mind, the theme of this entire video is multiple things can be true at once. JLR has done his fair share of muddying the waters in this case and continues to do so. But let's take another look at another example of misinformation and problems or characters that were Team Seth and Tony in the beginning. Anybody remember a dog handler by the name of Jules? Well, at one point in time, Jules was Team Seth also. In my opinion, Jules was just another character that caused distractions and chaos. But if you really pay attention to when these people interjected themselves into this case and who they aligned with, you will see a pattern of behavior. It's right before our eyes. And yes, for those of you waiting for BHB to make her entrance into this video, don't worry, she'll be coming up too.
What you're doing, trying to be a dog handler, you're calling in on shows after Jules is, and sending pictures of your dogs. You don't even get their names right.
Tony is actually speaking on Steph in the beginning of this clip, and Steph was, as you all know, the fake dog handler who was never a dog handler but had about 50 other careers and was Catholic and needs to go to confessional and confess of all of her sins of LARPing in a missing child's case, if you ask me. But yours truly here, and the help of the Islanders, exposed Steph fully.
The images you're sending in of your dogs have been reverse Google image searched, and they actually came from like Chewy. They're Chewy images. So, I mean, this is crazy.
Tequila! Oh yeah, I forgot brandy, vodka, and what was the other one? Oh, how could I forget? Whiskey.
And highly disrespectful, because Jules is a 13-year Army captain. I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but she's a 13-year Army captain serving her country. She's got 7 highly qualified dogs. She's got 2 dogs that are pertinent to the type of search that we're doing. What kind of dogs were those, Dana?
And once again, thank you, Jules, for your service. However, the chaos and confusion you caused is unacceptable. You became just another distraction and character in a missing child's case. That was vetted by the biological father's spokesperson, as you see.
Huh?
That German Shepherd's Malinois.
German Shepherd, and what was the other one? Malinois or something?
Yeah, Belgian Malinois.
Yeah, like no joke of a dog, according to my wife. I don't know shit about dogs, sorry. But, so Jules, when you hear the name Jules, She is our canine person, and she is a part of our team. She's Seth's girl. You know, we support her, we endorse her. She is, if her name isn't Jules, then she's not a part of what we're doing. I have no idea who this Stephanie person is, but she's not part of our team. And honestly, I think she's probably a troll. I don't even know if she's a real dog handler.
As you heard JLR state, he doesn't have very high opinions of Tony. Him and Tony started going back and forth on different platforms. JLR on YouTube and Twitter, Tony on TikTok and Facebook groups. In my opinion, both did nothing but stir up a bunch of unnecessary drama. But that drama led to the spokesperson of the biological father, Seth Rogers, doxing creators such as JLR on TikTok with other parts of their quote-unquote team. The upcoming clips, you will see just a small section of some of Tony and Seth's team participating in doxing events on JLR and others. Keep in mind, JLR's hands aren't clean either. He put out a bunch of information on Tony. Along with doxing other creators that Tony doesn't agree with, they also misrepresented situations that Seth himself had been a part of. One of those situations being the bonfire link for t-shirt sales, which of course I'm going to provide clips of so you can see for yourself. And just another reminder, Tony didn't enter the picture until the end of April, beginning of May. Seth had aligned himself with other problematic creators such as TRev757, JLR, and so on. They, however, were quickly removed from the situation after Tony came in, and then all of those creators started having problems with Tony. In other words, it's been a revolving shit show of misinformation and chaos.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll tell you guys a true story. Not only is he not selling anything, he's giving bracelets away. He's not selling them. And they didn't even have any T-shirts when I went to Hendersonville. I was hoping to buy a T-shirt, donate, whatever. They didn't even have any.
Yeah, and I can vouch for the fact that he was not selling the bracelets. I have one on right now that it was completely free.
The people in the boxes on TikTok are a part of Tony and Seth's team. One to include a supposed attorney, one to be a supposed law enforcement officer, and then two females I'm not very familiar with, but again, I call them the TikTok twits. And hopefully you'll understand a little bit more reason why I call them that coming up.
They're selling merchandise with Sebastian's picture on it, and they said all proceedings go to Seth. Okay, well that's different than somebody trying to say Seth's making money off of them.
Well, and I'd have a tough time believing that Seth hasn't approved anything like that, I can tell you that.
Right.
And he's not asking for that and doesn't want that.
Again, if you can, go and grab a T-shirt. These T-shirts Seth sent me to share with you guys. Again, here's his favorite color, the green one. This is the one I ordered. Well, I didn't order the sweatshirt. Actually, I ordered a T-shirt. But again, you can get all these different ones. They have extra small, medium, large, extra large, 2XL, 3XL, 4XL. They have women's all the way, pullover hoodie. They have tons of different stuff if you're looking in here. Tri-blend, comfort, women's slim. So if you guys want to get, you could get a pink one. You could get green. There's tons of different T-shirt options up here for you guys. Again, this is the direct link that Seth Rogers himself sent to me, Sebastian's father. And I'm going to be posting that in chat periodically. You'll be saying, oh, what is this link? Well, it's the T-shirts for Sebastian.
So once again, Tony was misrepresenting what actually had happened before he entered the situation. Seth had approved this t-shirt design and link, and all proceeds from the t-shirt sales were to go directly to Seth. When the team switches members constantly, there's always going to be issues. The upcoming clip will give you a great example of why JLR and Tony have issues.
Is that the mustache man he also tried to sue? Kayla?
I'm sorry, what?
Was that the mustache man he tried to sue?
Yeah. And all survivors of the Holocaust, the Lincoln Memorial, Eiffel Tower, the USS Cole, the book, whatever that says, the Garden of Eden, the Roman Empire.
Notice the same team members on screen. Tony might not be present, but his team members are as they're going through JLR's problematic past.
Can you give us an abbreviation for what platform that is, ESL?
She said what? YT.
Yeah, but she's meaning like who?
The channel.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I wasn't very clear on that.
I'll send it to KJ.
Okay. Oh, okay. No wonder.
Well, never mind.
Yeah.
Oh, that says it all right there.
Yeah.
If you're on there watching that, ask him how his PEDO brother's doing.
Not only did Tony go after JLR, he also went after other creators such as Dolly Vision. You'll notice in the comments that is who they are talking about. Now, mind you, this is the man who is the PR person for the biological father of a missing child. Tell me in the comments, do you think that's very professional behavior? And y'all know I think Dolly is as problematic as the rest. But for a PR spokesperson to be doing this stuff, what are your thoughts?
Come on. And then you got this moron talking trash about Seth and Tony every day. And then you got his moron followers that have made his net worth $9.29 million on hurting people.
If anybody believes that JLR is worth $9.4 million, I've got oceanfront property in Arizona to sell you. But notice, once again, same team members, same dirty tactics. And again, JLR's hands aren't clean either. He's just very sly behind the scenes. But don't worry, we'll get back to JLR in a few moments, and I'll give you more examples.
All they got to do is stop talking about Seth and Tony. Literally. Mm-hmm. Like, if you want to cover Sebastian case, please do. Recover the facts of it. Help us find him.
So Tony and Seth's team want everybody to not discuss their behaviors or misinformation that they've put out here, because otherwise they will dox you. And just another reminder that Tony and Seth have a new member of their team, Bullhorn Betty. Let's look at that. And as they were playing clips from one of, in my opinion, the most problematic creators on Tony and Seth's team, they also were going at Savage Live Media and putting her picture and full name up in the corner. I covered that for her privacy. It really seems to me that the case of a missing child got muddied by so many creators intentionally causing chaos in this case.
JLR is aligned with these very people that have done that to me. And then they try to destroy me and take my channel and take my livelihood away. And that man is aligned with them. And he's been aligned with them behind the scenes. So if you guys want to know why I'm so hard on this, it's because, you know what? Next time you go to try to take me out, you better take me all the way out. But these people here on these streets will do a lot. So please be careful when you guys hear or see something salacious. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. I don't know what, Tony's stuff looks like. I would have said that Jonathan, but that was entirely too, so I knew it wasn't him. But, I don't think it was Tony. I don't see any good reason. I don't know of that man sitting at his dining.
Miss Bullhorn Betty, who is still a part of Tony and Seth's team at this point in time. Meanwhile, Betty, again, was just served with 3 orders of protection from the Proudfoot and Bowersox family because of the harassment that, in my opinion, she's been doing to them. And if you haven't seen Bullhorn Betty's recent behaviors, I encourage you to go watch my last video. I encourage you to go watch my previous video on Bullhorn Betty, and in my opinion, the stalking and harassing she's been doing of the biological mother, stepfather, and the missing child's grandparents. So while JLR might be correct on Tony and having problematic behavior, there is also more going on than a lot realize. There's been a lot of team members that have came and went that have caused intentional chaos, in my opinion. But let's go back to JLR and some more spins and twists.
It was all bogus information, and it really took time and resources away from law enforcement in handling this case. So they don't like TikTok Tony, and most of you don't like him either. I don't like him because he take personal jabs at me, whatever, when I was in the hospital. But it kind of shows his character on who the guy is.
And that is true. Tony did take jabs at JLR when he was in the hospital. And I remind you, all of these people were at one point in time Team Seth, including JLR. It's almost became who can be the most problematic character involved. And yet they all claim that they're in it for the missing child. I don't think so.
As a person. But being side by side muzzling Seth and giving hand signals to Seth on select interviews.
Seems to me creators ran with the fact that Chris and Katie were using hand signals in interviews too. It's the same old story, just wash, rinse, repeat, different characters, different day. And while JLR is concerned about hand signals, I'm more concerned about the content that has been provided in some of these interviews. The upcoming clip is from Bullhorn Betty's channel when she had Seth and Tony on for an interview. There were a whole lot of problematic pieces of this interview, but this one in particular stood out to me. They might not be using hand signals in this, but listen to the words that are said.
Has been since the disappearance of your son, and I know you're talking about the loneliness, but has there been any other hindrances, resources? There was a time and a place that you actually said that you believe you may know where your son is, but you just don't have the resources to get him. What did you mean by that?
I don't remember stating that. But he's somewhere. When it comes down to resources, it's like I would like to follow every lead possible. I'd like to go down every rabbit hole. And I know I can't do it. Everybody wants to complain about this, complain about that, and to add stress. And stress is the #1 killer in life.
That's just one small clip from that interview that was problematic in my opinion. I mean, Betty went on to say she wanted to waterboard the mother of the missing child.
What I want to say is a disservice to all of you out there. It's not right, because there is a lot of information out there that is circulating that makes you go, particularly before Sebastian went missing. The allegations, on both sides, Katie and Seth. Seth is no angel according to these allegations, whether they're true or not. But I think it's fair for Seth Rogers to address these issues. And I say what? Or you might ask, what issues? What issues? Well, before Sebastian went missing, Katie made very serious allegations against Seth. Now, the details are sealed. However, some have been leaked.
JLR is the king of throwing out random tidbits and letting people go wild with speculation. If someone is leaking sealed documents, that in itself is a major problem.
Katie has been accused Seth of doing bad things towards Sebastian. What bad things? Could be neglect. Could he be even more higher up than that? I'm not going to use your imagination. That is the truth, but Seth won't put that information out there. And I do think that the phones being seized are definitely relevant to this whole situation.
I'm just now getting them to Margin, John Kelly 420. I don't know. I know they took all of our phones. They had mine for 12 hours.
Seth's phone was returned the same day.
What is in those electronic devices? Communications Seth and Katie had prior to Sebastian gone missing. What was said in emails? What was in the hard drive?
Again, that was another rumor that was kicked off by a TikToker that was associated with the United Cajun Navy. And whether there is any substance to that or not is up for law enforcement to decide. If you pick up the words he's using, like hard drive, you will track exactly what JLR is doing here. A lot of this information is for law enforcement, not the public. Somebody's been feeding JLR some information and hoping he dangles these carrots out. And sure enough, people are eating it all up. I see you. I definitely see you. And I have a suspicion of who's feeding him these little tidbits for him to dangle to his audience. YouTube creators seem to think that this has become a real-life game of Clue. And seems to me that they don't really care much about the truth anymore.
Of Seth's devices. Nintendo Switch. Was Seth communicating with law enforcement or with Seth about it? Or, I'm sorry, I'm driving, it's kind of hot out here. Was Seth communicating with Sebastian and said some things that piques law enforcement interest? Because, if devices don't have evidentiary value, you would think that those devices would be returned to the proper owner ASAP.
So we know his phone was already returned. The only thing, to my knowledge, that they kept was Sebastian's Nintendo Switch. Law enforcement is going to keep anything that they find of any value in this case. Again, Sebastian is still missing.
But Seth and Tony are literally begging law enforcement to clear him.
clearly we have some questions there. But my bigger question as Seth's spokesperson, and where I would ask CourtTV to give us some assistance is, we have video evidence that shows that Seth was at work. We've had all of his electronic devices that have been seized and dumped. We'd like to know why Seth still hasn't been cleared, or what they might need from Seth and or myself to get him cleared.
So they have not cleared? I didn't realize that. I just didn't realize that was the situation. So
not at all.
So my guess is if they haven't cleared him, that may explain some of the lack of communication that is going back and forth in this case.
Good possibility. But what more do you want from me? I was at work. I was video camera from 6 p.m. till after 7 a.m. the next morning. My son should be with me right now. He should be in this house, and I should not be looking for him. Tell me where I don't gain anything from this. This is not funny. The fact is I'm looking for my son. He's not here. Y'all took my electronics. What more do you want? I mean, do they need my bank records? I mean, you can have them. I mean, I don't understand what I have to do to get cleared.
We're willing to do anything to get cleared, Vinny.
Go ahead, Tony.
There are resources.
Yeah, we're willing to do anything to work with them to get him cleared, because it does allow us to bring in more resources once he's clear. And if the video evidence, the phone data, and whatever else they may need isn't enough, then we'd simply like us to tell them, why is it that he hasn't been cleared? He did a polygraph test with a well-known FBI polygrapher that Nancy Grace set up, and he passed that with flying colors. So,
we're out of time, unfortunately. Tony, I'm sorry I have to cut you off.
I'm going to include the clips from March 18th once again, just so you can hear Seth's own words.
Typically, TBI doesn't clear anybody until until the investigation is done.
So he knew on March 18th he wouldn't be cleared until the investigation was done.
Been cleared. No, they have not. They've not been cleared. No one's not been cleared. Have you been cleared? I mean, I would say Seth's more cleared than anybody. That's my opinion.
TBI hasn't cleared anybody.
Thank you. And you are in law enforcement, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So once again, you hear Seth state, no one has been cleared, and that won't happen until the investigation is closed. I'm not sure what changed to start this new push to get Seth cleared, besides team members.
That is weird, folks. That is weird. It does not make no sense at all when it comes to this case. You shouldn't have to beg law enforcement to clear you, and they're not going to publicly clear you if you're demanding it and you have a sketchy past. It'd be the equivalent, right? I have a past. I try my best to make better choices every day and live productively, learn from my mistakes, and bring public awareness to bad things out there. That's what I do.
Deets on the Streets actually did a very good comprehensive breakdown of JLR and his problematic behavior. I will include the link in the description. If you have not watched that, I highly recommend watching that for more of an extensive overview of his behavior in the past.
I have my own way to do it. You might agree with some, you might disagree, whatever. That's how I roll. But I made a choice and vowed, hey, I'm going to make good decisions and do good things, okay? But there's always a prejudice against me in society. As far as I'll always be judged. And if I was, say for instance, remove TikTok Tony from the equation and say I was the spokesperson for Seth Rogers.
JLR might not be the spokesperson in this case for Seth Rogers, but he absolutely played a key role in the misinformation from jump.
His PR guy. Do you really think me, as me being a convicted felon and me having trouble in the past, though I have been trouble in years, long time, you think law enforcement's going to reveal information to me? Tony Mathis has a criminal record. There's no secret about that. So for Tony to expect to get them some things out of law enforcement is preposterous.
If you rewind in the stream, I provided clips of Tony saying Seth did not want him speaking to law enforcement.
It's ridiculous. It's bogus. They're not going to give them information. But what I find very, very strange about this whole case is apparently the Proudfoots been cleared. Or the Proudfoots didn't have their devices seized and theirs returned, but Seth still has his. seized. I don't know. Have they returned? Can anyone elaborate if Seth's devices have been returned?
And again, I provided a clip that Seth said his phone was taken for 12 hours only. As far as Sebastian's Nintendo Switch from Seth's house, I have no idea.
And with this particular case, Sebastian Rogers, I doubt we will ever see Seth Rogers, I'm not speaking about Seth, side by side with law enforcement. That's very telling, folks. It's very telling. If you are a so-called, what you want to put out, grieving father, he very well could be grieving. I don't personally think Seth Rogers did something to Sebastian. I've said that over and over. But who knows at this point, because it's just weird. There's a lot of weird things centered around this case that do not make sense.
Again, I can agree with JLR that there are some odd things in this case. But I also see what JLR is doing. He is putting out little salacious tidbits and hoping to spin another narrative in this story. How does that help find Sebastian? And frankly, law enforcement doesn't owe the public anything. This is a missing child.
And Seth Rogers is not standing side by side with law enforcement and begging law enforcement to clear him, and he hasn't been cleared in his eyes. Maybe he has, and they're just not telling nothing. But I do think, folks, with Sebastian's case, we might see some action. Reason being, you have an acting sheriff, Eric Craddock, the number 2. Now, you know the sheriff of Sumner County, Weatherford, died.
Rest in peace to Weatherford. And JLR isn't the only creator out here trying to spin some weird, salacious bullshit about the unfortunate death of the previous sheriff. But of course, in true YouTube fashion, it wouldn't be a true crime story without some crazy conspiracy theories laid in, would it?
Weird circumstances, but that's a whole other story. Weatherford dies, Craddock is acting, and Weatherford's wife is actively putting out to re-elect Craddock. Though there'll probably be other names out there, I don't know the names offhand. But with that, folks, there's a lot of pressure on Craddock in the re-election aspect. Do you think Craddock could be re-elected if he doesn't solve this case?
Eric Craddock wasn't elected to begin with, he was appointed. Sumner County Sheriff's Department wants to solve this case because there is a missing child. Inlaying all this political stuff with elections isn't necessary, JLR. You're kind of starting to sound a little bit more like BHB here, JLR. I mean, in my opinion, you kind of did teach her the playbook, didn't you?
And do you think if he knows he can solve this case, that's automatic re-election? If Craddock solves this case, he is 100% guaranteed not being re-elected, elected. He wasn't elected before, so let me just revise that a minute. He's acting sheriff, but he's up for election. He's acting sheriff up for election. So in order for him to be elected, he has to make that big splash. Can you make that big splash with this case, the biggest case in Sumner County history, lingering in his lens, in the public, right? Because a lot of people want this case solved. And there's a lot of people, particularly in my chat, all of you, are from Sumner County or from that area, Tennessee, Central Tennessee. This was a big case, and it still is a big case.
How about the fact that there has to be evidence for the sheriff's department to solve this case? Meanwhile, Sumner County has been assisted by the TBI, the FBI, the Secret Service. I'm going to go out on a whim and say that I bet Eric Craddock wants to solve this case because there's a missing child and a family being put through absolute hell because of YouTubers and crazy social media involvement.
But if Craddock doesn't solve the case, he might not get elected. So the stakes are very high. That's why I also feel fresh eyes, Craddock, fresh eyes, and an urgency to maybe use tactics or different investigative techniques to solve this case. But as it seems like on the surface, Craddock and Seth Rogers are definitely not on the same page. What's very weird about this, and some people are saying in the chat, Proudfoots and law enforcement are like this.
I'm going to insert a clip from an older interview where the TBI spokesperson says that the parents have all been cooperative. Yes, it's an older interview, but according to Nick Barris' post as of today, the 12th of August, nothing has changed. Parents have been cooperative. Their stories have been vetted and rechecked numerous times. I will also include those screenshots as an overlay. So while JLR is concerned about Eric Craddock not being elected if this case isn't solved, again, it goes back to they need evidence. And ultimately, I'm sure everyone would love to bring Sebastian home. But I guess silly me, I forgot. People on the internet say that the Proudfoot family and the Bowersox family have obviously paid off Sumner County, the FBI, the TBI, the Secret Service, you know, the whole country they seem to be in control of because they're turning their other cheek and not doing their jobs. Absolutely ridiculousness. I guess for people like JLR and BHB, they don't know what it's like to be well-respected members of their communities, like the Bowersox and Proudfoot families. So because Sumner County is doing their job and relying on evidence before they charge somebody with a crime, in their minds, this has got to be corruption of some sort. And Seth isn't being treated unfairly by law enforcement. You heard Tony say that he failed to do what they asked him to do in the beginning of this case, to build trust with law enforcement. Seth refused to do it.
Can to keep advance the investigation. It is not gone to a place where anybody has forgotten about him or is not pursuing this. The parents have been cooperative throughout the beginning of the investigation. They have pretty much done whatever law enforcement has asked of them.
This is a clip that Vinnie used on his CourtTV segment the other night. It is an older clip, but as you see in Nick's post, nothing has changed.
I don't know, but what I've heard based off reports, you know, and there's some other things going on where the Proudfoots are going to court right now, dealing with someone accused of stalking them. And what I was told was, at this court hearing, there was Craddock there at that court hearing, along with the district attorney, in the courtroom, trying to press the judge to extend the deadline to file some sort of restraining order, some stalking restraining order, whatever. People are bothering Katie.
JLR won't mention who he's discussing, but we all know he's talking about BHB. Again, I encourage you to go watch the video part 24 on my series. It highlights some of the finer moments of BHB and what she has done to the Proudfoot and Bowersox family. And yes, we will still be taking a look at some of JLR's movements in the beginning of this case that are very similar, in my opinion, to Betty's. Betty's just, in my opinion, more unhinged. JLR's, again, a lot more slick. He's a lot more seasoned at his playbook.
But that's very telling that law enforcement would be there with the Proudfoots. Unless there's something fishy going on Seth's side about this case. When I mean Seth's side is personal sabotage, purposely putting out misinformation.
There is actually a lot of reasons why law enforcement could have been there if they were. And unfortunately, these are people that are on Seth's team, the biological father's team. And I'm sure that is confusing how the biological father can be supporting and or aligning himself with the very people who are harassing and stalking, in my opinion, the biological mother of his missing son. And I'm going to roll the tape once more so you can hear Seth's PR man speaking about why he potentially may have a tarnished relationship with law enforcement.
Let me tell you how, Ocean. Do you remember me telling you guys last night that Seth had been accusing them of not giving him the same information that he was giving CP and KP?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So walk with me down this path. Early on, they asked Seth to do some things in their mind to gain their trust. He didn't do those things, and they cut him off for a long time with communication. He was not getting communication through his PIs. They weren't getting communication on his behalf. Nothing to do with anything their fault. It just wasn't happening. So CP and KP might have had, well, if they chose to share this with them, they might have not shared it with them for obvious reasons, but they may have had information for a long time that we didn't have.
There could be many reasons why there is a break in communication between Seth and law enforcement, but his PR man was pretty sure of what caused that in the beginning.
Point is, there's something very strange with the scenario where it seemed like law enforcement is taking sides with the Proudfoots and going against Seth.
There is no indication that law enforcement is going against Seth Rogers whatsoever, besides Seth and Tony's words. Oh, and BHB's also. But I'm sure it's very confusing to law enforcement that the biological father is supporting the very woman who is threatening to sue the entire Sumner County and calling them corrupt, all because she took her shenanigans way too far, in my opinion. And if the biological father is condoning and agreeing with that, yeah, I'm sure there's some distrust there. Absolutely so. Law enforcement is attempting to bring home a missing child. All the intentional chaos that has been caused by Seth's team, I'm sure raises some red flags. Just like in the upcoming clip, instead of Bullhorn Betty handling business like an adult and being served with her paperwork and going to court, now she is spinning a complete new narrative about corruption in Sumner County. All of this while claiming that she is an advocate for the missing child. And in my opinion, intentionally making law enforcement's job harder.
And of course, I'm listening to everything that's going on, and of course I've learned that there may be a sheriff's office or a sheriff's deputy or somebody in law enforcement improperly assisting Katie and Chris and the Bowerstocks and whatever they're trying to do, which is completely illegal and improper. They're lying under oath, and a deputy is assisting them. That is a major problem for me. Is there an appearance of impropriety? Yes, I think there is definitely. Whether there is or not, there's the appearance.
Meanwhile, she didn't show up for court. She's avoided being served with the TROs. But of course, in true Betty fashion, it's everybody else's fault. There's something else going on. Could never be her behavior.
Now, again, it's weird because I think at the end of the day, the whole mystery is Katie Proudfoot. However, it's just weird that these things are happening before our eyes. My sources tell me criminal charges are coming on people for a person dealing with the Sebastian Rogers case soon. That's what my sources have told me, boots on the ground, based off the buzz that's going on in Sumner County. And it's not for the kidnapping or the murder of Sebastian Rogers. I'm just saying about the behaviors centered around trying to mislead law enforcement, trick law enforcement, purposely put misinformation out, planting evidence, that sort of thing.
Anyone want to take a wild guess at who JLR's sources are? Don't worry, shortly he'll tell you about how he gained some of these sources. A lot of people have been speculating that people are going to start being charged with interfering with an active investigation. Personally, I'm very hopeful that that does happen, and I will not be shocked in the least when it does. People like BHB and JLR have done nothing but intentionally paint narratives against the parents in this case, and continue to do so. The upcoming snippet is from one of Betty's first streams covering Sebastian's case, and she's only gotten worse since. Once upon a time, she used to use JLR's Facebook group for all of the source of her misinformation.
So there you guys have it, folks. I don't believe the Proudfoots, and you know what? It's going to piss everybody off, and I really don't give a shit. Talk about me. Talk about Bullhorn Betty all day long about how awful I am and how I'm going in there to stir up shit. I don't really care, but we're putting eyes on this boy some way, somehow, and we're putting eyes on the Proudfoot some way, somehow. And you know what? If any of the Proudfoot family is out there, this is a 15-year-old boy, and whether or not he was your kin or not, that man is your kin. And if you have any doubt in your mind that man is capable of this, come forward. I am dead ass serious. Freaking come forward. We need to find Sebastian. Sebastian didn't deserve any of this. He deserved none of it. And I don't want to hear nothing from the Proudfoots. You know how your family, you know how Chris is. You know Chris better than any of us. You know that man. You know he can't keep a relationship. You know he's been violent in the past. You've watched him while he's been drunk. You know his behaviors. You know, and you're sitting silently by and doing jack shit while this boy is out there somewhere and needs to come home. I don't have the patience for any of you. Do the right thing. Not because it's the easy thing, but because it's the right thing to do. I can't.
I think she unintentionally got eyes on herself while she was trying to get eyes on the Proudfoot family. I mean, a little bit of karma if you ask me.
My sources tell me charges are coming. And if it's Team Seth is in some big trouble, possibly.
We don't know what's to come and who's all involved, honestly. Could it be people taking advantage of a grieving father that is absolutely desperate to find answers for his missing son? And could it also be that Seth reached out and intentionally helped cause this chaos in his missing child's case? My personal opinion is both could be true at the same time. Because I'll remind you once again, Seth contacted JLR to get involved in this case. And we are still going to take a look at some of JLR's involvement in the beginning of this case. He himself was Team Seth.
Especially if he's directing people to do dirty work for him. Could be in big trouble. Now, what remains to be seen, but
in the upcoming clip, here's another example of some of BHB's most recent behavior in this case. And this was all said and done after she publicly acknowledged that she knew there was TPOs on her that she was avoiding service for.
Look up what constitutes cyberbullying, for the love of God. Me talking about somebody on my channel is covered under the First Amendment. I do not say anything. I do not send people out there. You know, it's ridiculous. I pray daily for God. It doesn't matter. I'll deal with it. Right? They're what are they saying? Oh my gosh, Bullhorn Betty's going to be arrested. You guys can go pick out one of like 10 freaking photos of me, of a mugshot for me. This lady has just sunk her damn boat. She's a freaking idiot. All this makes them look even more guilty. It does make them look more guilty. They're freaking idiots. Betty has looked more for Sebastian than his own mother. Yeah. Yeah, but I think what it is she's trying to get the thing for Sebastian, the raising of the voices for Sebastian, because one of the things that we're calling for is Seth to be cleared, because he's got an airtight alibi, and they don't want that.
Typically, TBI doesn't clear anybody until until the investigation is done.
So they're doing everything they can, but either way you look at it, you can't lie to a court for the ends to a means. I mean, you're committing crimes, but I guess you murdered a kid, so it probably doesn't matter, you know, allegedly, right?
Again, I remind you, this is Seth's team who is saying this about his child's mother. I'm sure law enforcement does have questions about why he is aligned with these people who are saying and doing the absolute most. Seth knows why he hasn't been cleared. You heard him from March 18th, acknowledging that the TBI does not clear anybody until the case is resolved. But Betty, in my opinion, doesn't realize that the word allegedly doesn't cover her ass on all things.
So nobody knows where her kid is. She can't produce her son. Her son didn't walk out of the house. I mean, it doesn't take rocket science here. And by me saying that, it's a civil, not even criminal. Like it doesn't matter. We'll deal with it when I get the paperwork. I will deal with it at that time.
She claims she has hired an attorney now to handle this. So I'm assuming they will be able to serve the attorney because BHB has been hiding from service.
But I can tell you 100% without a doubt, I've never harassed that lady. There is not a court of law in the United States of America that will not throw this case completely, utterly out on its face. Not a court of law. I've never even met this lady in person. How could I possibly, you guys need to look up what harassment entails. It doesn't entail somebody talking on their channel. It doesn't entail somebody covering a case.
Oh, Betty, you know as well as I do, and everybody else on the internet, that you've done a lot more than just covering a case. But I figured I would include another reminder of Betty's own words about harassment.
When does it stop? When does the criminal enterprise stop being criminal enterprises? Because that's what I'm looking at them as. Criminal enterprises here on the streets of YouTube that do nothing but bully people. It's illegal to bully people. It's illegal to use electronic devices to harass somebody. It's a felony in most states. So if you're engaging in that, you need to probably look at that. And if you don't believe me, maybe look up your own state statutes to see if it exists. Because I guarantee if you just look and read, you might be shocked. Just saying. This is Nick Bear should be very, very concerned because this is freedom of press that they're trying to violate. Sebastian didn't walk out of the home. Yeah. And I'll say it again loud and clear. If they want to
old Betty and her fake press credentials.
Arrest me each and every time I say it, then I guess we're just going to be paying a lot of bail money because they're not going to stop my mouth from running. I can use my mouth any way I choose on my own body. It's my body, my choice.
You can use your mouth any way you choose to, but some of those actions have consequences, and you might find out.
The weird thing I say about the situation with my own experience with Seth Rogers is the one thing that I look back at and just think so weird is Seth Rogers called me up on the phone and asked me to help him. He almost begged me. You could say begged, but he asked me. And at the time, not knowing lack of information, and my crucial mistake on these cases is do not get involved with any of the parents in these cases or potential suspects early in the stages. I learned that mistake because I immediately stepped to the plate and said, Seth Rogers, grieving father, I'm going to go help him.
Not only did you say Seth Rogers' grieving father, you're going to go help him, you also, in my opinion, had a hand in a lot of false narratives being painted about the Proudfoot family. Weren't you one of the first ones to go to Chris's job, JLR?
Memphis, Tennessee. I am in Memphis, Tennessee. JLR Investigates, boots on the ground. Come on in, let's talk. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to the Sebastian Rogers case. A lot. In particular, in my mind, prime suspect number 1 and 2 in this terrible, terrible tragedy. And that would be Christopher Proudfoot and Katie Proudfoot. Katie Proudfoot, the mother of Sebastian, and Christopher Proudfoot, the stepfather. 2 people that most of the internet think are involved with this terrible situation. And I can say that today, I was out there searching today with the biological father, Seth Rogers. I was just a little bit east of here, off of I-40, and I was out there all afternoon. There was a group of volunteers, Jaden, the Joneses, and numerous others were out there looking for Sebastian. And I got to know the biological father, great guy, shared a lot of history about Sebastian, who Sebastian was as a child. Got to know him, and my heart goes out. This guy is trying his best to find answers, and kudos to him, and he's going to...
Meanwhile, Betty is trying to claim that JLR is working on behalf of the Proudfoots. Yeah, right.
Continue to do that. They're going to continue to do searches. But we're here today to talk about this place right here, because when it comes to Christopher Proudfoot, who in my mind, and probably most of yours, feels he is the prime suspect in his stepson's disappearance. Well, this is his supposed alibi. This is his alibi, folks.
This looks awfully familiar. It feels like we watched Betty do the same thing outside St. Jude and attempt to paint a narrative about Chris.
But what he asked me to do in Magnolia was to go search for Sebastian hundreds of miles away at Natchez Trace State Park near Jackson. And my mind's thinking, why are we out here? Why are we out here? Like, why is Seth directing us away from the area where this occurred? And to me, I feel like it was a ruse, and that's my opinion, to go another direction away from the real issue. But then when you start prying Seth for answers and you follow up questions and everything like that, he instantly isolates and cuts people off. You either have to be Team Seth or you're out. But you can't ask the questions. The questions. Like what led up to Sebastian being a backstory.
You didn't seem to care about that at the time, did you, JLR? Because you willingly went to get all the footage you could get to put it out for a story and content on YouTube. Again, why would you be asking questions? You're not law enforcement, and you're sure as heck not an investigator of any sorts. I thought Seth asked you to come in to bring awareness to his missing child. Why would you need to be asking him any questions?
Which is very suspect to me. It's fishy. I feel like I was used, but I don't take that personally, because at the end of the day, it's something that happens. And people's behaviors speak for themselves. Things come out. With Seth, another thing that's interesting is, as we were progressing towards the Proudfoots around the neighborhood or whatnot, and asking people questions, Seth's mom sends me a cease and desist.
Again, JLR, why are you prying around the neighborhood asking questions of the Proudfoot neighbors? Oh, wait, Seth asked you to come in, didn't he? But Robin didn't just send you a cease and desist out of nowhere, did she, JLR? You did video after video after video going after Robin Rogers, the grandmother of Sebastian Rogers. Because of why, JLR? Did she refuse to continue on with the narrative that you guys were pushing? I can't imagine at the end of the day the stress that this has caused even her. Because no matter what, this family has a missing child.
Well, what we've been discussing is a lot of family drama. Yesterday, Seth Rogers' mother, Robin Rogers, she lashed out. She lashed out at Chris and Katie. Then later on, she kind of backtracked. And I'm going to show you what she said. She said she met with the TBI. Seth's mother met with the TBI. That's what she claims. And then last night, Tony Mathis talks to a TikToker. And he fires off. He fires off. And we're going to play that. They're not working together. It's done. When we're talking about working together, we're talking about Seth's camp, which consists of Tony Mathis, a PI named Chloe, and his inner circle. I don't know who's within his inner circle. I think Robin Rogers, his mother is, maybe some, locals rallying around Seth. And then you have Chris and Katie. And we thought that they were going to work together, but they're not working together. It's done. And it's been confirmed last night by Tony Mathis. He says he tried, but we knew it wasn't going to work. We knew it was a farce. And thank God they're distancing themselves, because I personally don't think they should work together. No way. They each should do their own thing. But Chris has been exposed on how he treats women so poorly and badly.
I find it disgusting that a YouTuber would not want the family of a missing child to work together or get along. I mean, to me, that speaks to a whole lot of intent of what these YouTubers really wanted to see. I guess peaceful families working together for the greater good of finding their missing child doesn't bring the salacious drama that sells the clicks and views, does it, JLR? Didn't you have a message for Robin and Katie on Mother's Day, JLR?
Happy Mother's Day to all of you. You all are loved. You all are blessed. Shout out to all the mothers. JLR Investigates. Good morning. We're talking about the Sebastian Rogers case today. I wonder how Katie Proudfoot is feeling about today, Mother's Day.
I'm sure she was heartbroken. That's what I would assume.
It's a mystery, folks, and we still do not have answers with this case. But this case has been centered around a lot of drama and controversy. A lot of mud being thrown back and forth between the Proudfoots and the Rogers side of the family. And it's not just Seth, folks. We're going to talk about Seth's mother, who is Robin Rogers, who is Sebastian's grandmother, because the internet is a little bit upset right now with Robin Rogers. And we're talking about her right here.
Remember, JLR was just in this because his heart was in this. Meanwhile, it was Mother's Day and he took every opportunity to go at Katie and Robin Rogers.
Made a lot of statements online. She's been in the groups, she's been on YouTube, in the chats, and she's said a lot of things so far with this case. Actually, to be honest, she kind of set the ball at the beginning of the stages to, call out the Proudfoots. She was pretty much the catalyst who started hey, Christopher Proudfoot, Katie, we're not afraid of you. You're hiding things. And, what do you know? And kind of deal. And it kind of got people like, okay, it's the Proudfoots, with Seth Rogers' mom leading the charge.
Blaming Robin for leading the charge of going after Katie and Chris. And yes, she had some very unkind things to say. But again, I can't imagine being in her shoes and having a missing grandchild either. I choose empathy for Robin. Seems to me JLR was a little upset that she stopped posting in his Facebook group.
I want to show you something very interesting because I titled this video, Grandma Failed Sebastian. And this is what people are talking about.
Reminder, this was Mother's Day.
It doesn't want me prying around anymore. Which is very weird because you would think anyone that has the general heart to help, our heart was there, our heart wanted to help, we wanted to find answers, we wanted to help find the boy, but when you genuinely want to help and then being told to stay away, it's weird.
What's weird is you claiming to have a heart, JLR. He claims he wanted to help. Meanwhile, you see he was there making sure he got all the shots for content. And upcoming is another example of how his heart was so in this.
Vanished around his Hendersonville, Tennessee home. He lived with his stepfather, Christopher Proudfoot, and his mother, Katie Proudfoot. But there's some new information, folks. Authorities are searching at a landfill. A landfill. Right now, they are looking for any signs of Sebastian. They actually have a warrant to search a landfill. Now let's talk. What is going on here? Why would they search a landfill?
And as you all know, unfortunately, the landfill didn't turn up with any answers. But JLR made sure to go out to a local spot of his own for some content. But don't worry, folks. I've got some clips to share with you of JLR, boots on the ground.
I am in Hendersonville, Tennessee. The family of Sebastian, his mom, Katie Proudfoot, and his stepdad, Christopher Proudfoot, they live a little bit to the north of here. Now, I'm going to take you on a ride around their neighborhood. I'm going to show you firsthand where Sebastian lived. Up and down the road, the construction site, the back of the family's home. Where is he? Take you to the fire station, the local fire station that was out there looking for this young boy. Still missing. We're going to go on a tour. Check this out.
Well, looky here. Seems like JLR was one of the first YouTubers, boots on the ground, driving in circles around the Proudfoot neighborhood. And yes, I edited the majority of that out because we've seen every single one of these clowns drive up and down past their home. But yet people continue to ask why they would have ever felt the need to leave their home. But he didn't only just go by their home. I think you'll recognize another spot he went to. We've seen sniffers and blowhorn at this place. JLR just happened to be one of the first that was out there.
Katie Proudfoot, Christopher Proudfoot, prime suspects in my eyes when it comes to this case. And we've been following it extensively, boots on the ground. I am in Mississippi. There has been a Proudfoot spotting in Mississippi. And I want to show you what's going on. They're at a campground in Mississippi.
Say it ain't so. Another video and more camera footage of them keeping the Proudfoots under surveillance, in my opinion.
Yes, Yogi Bear Campground, right on the other side of the border of Tennessee to Mississippi, close to Memphis. Now,
and you wonder how we got those sources? Well, let's listen to what he says about how he gained the sources he has on the ground in Hendersonville.
Canvassing the neighborhood, looking around the area for Sebastian. And we had an encounter the other day, going past the Proudfoot's home, and there was a strange car in the driveway that was pulling out. And then this car chased me around the neighborhood and was stalking my movements until I actually drove up and the car went around me and an individual got out and started taking pictures of me and my license plate. I want to show you this encounter and then we will further discuss. Check it.
The similarity between JLR and BHB is almost uncanny at this point. He says he was being chased and stalked around the Proudfoot neighborhood also. But I guess the question for me is, aren't you from Florida? Didn't you go to Tennessee to intentionally go dig into this case, JLR? Seems to me like that shows the intent of stalking and keeping them under surveillance. But again, that's just my opinion on the things that you put out here publicly on video. I'm sure you all recognize that car. Happens to be the one that BHB jumped out behind in traffic and screamed and hollered at. I also find it interesting that JLR passed by, circled back around, and now he slowed down and parked right outside their house to get them on camera. But he used words like he was being chased and stalked.
Where's Sebastian? Do you know? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, JLR Investigates. We're out here covering the case of missing Sebastian. Do you know where Sebastian is? Hello, sir. I know that you just came out of the Proudfoot's home. Do you know where Sebastian is? All right, so we got some car chasing me, and I'm on a public road. So we'll see. We'll see.
So JLR claims that they were chasing and stalking him. Meanwhile, that's their son's home that they were pulling out of. And they drive around him to pull off, and he is behind them. Shocker. Seems very similar to something else we just watched. Only difference is Betty screams and hollers like a crazed person.
So what in the world's going on here? Who is that? Well, my sources tell me those two individuals in the vehicle, one was a female driving, another was a man that got out. Those are Christopher Proudfoot's parents. What were they doing at the house? Considering, ladies and gentlemen, that the Proudfoots have more or less claimed they fled their home.
Tell me in the comments, would you feel safe with all of these YouTubers outside your home filming your constant every move? And I don't see anything weird about Chris's parents being at Chris's home. What I find weird is JLR went from Florida to Tennessee on request of Seth, and then he claims he was being stalked and chased around the neighborhood, yet we watched him circle back around and then hop out of his car? Say it ain't so.
While Sebastian is missing, what are they doing there? Well, that encounter, ladies and gentlemen, we reported it to the TBI, because anything that you see suspicious, you should report to the TBI.
Wasting law enforcement resources because Chris's parents happen to be at Chris's home.
If you see something, say something. And it was definitely odd that the parents were there when the Proudfoots were not. Were they instructed to go there by the Proudfoots, who I believe are prime suspects in the disappearance of Sebastian? Were they there on their own initiative? Were they there looking for the Proudfoots and couldn't find, Christopher and Katie and couldn't find them? Very strange, but other people also claim those two individuals in that vehicle has also chased them around the neighborhood and followed them. And you can almost say stalked them.
Yet we have never seen any proof of those claims.
It's weird stuff going on in reference to the Proudfoots and their behavior. Are the parents of Christopher Proudfoot in support of Katie and Christopher? Looks like they are. Now, we haven't heard much, ladies and gentlemen, on Katie's side of the family. Katie's side of the family, no one really knows anything about. They haven't spoke out in defense of Katie at all. My sources told me that Katie, her mom, and people on her side of the family in Virginia have been in big trouble with the law. Lots of criminal charges, some very egregious charges.
And unfortunately, we know that YouTubers and other people on social media took it upon themselves to hunt down all of Katie's family.
We're going to do another report on that aspect of the case and why the Katie side of the family, the Payne side of the family, are not publicly supporting Katie. Who's supporting the Proudfoots out there? Does anyone out there feel like the Proudfoots are not involved with the disappearance of Sebastian? Because it seems like 99.9% of the internet feel they are. What's your take? We are covering this case at all angles extensively. I'll be monitoring the situation, and if anything new develops or breaks, I will share with all of you. Boots on the ground there, and I was able to establish connections with people, like the neighbors of the Proudfoots, who I communicate with.
Bullshit and Bobby ring a bell to anybody? It's wild to me that the YouTubers took it upon themselves to hunt down the neighbors and build connections with the neighbors of the parents of a missing child.
Former associates of the Proudfoots, who I communicate with, community members who I now communicate with, and I built a network to be able to understand and moving forward, see what develops out of this case. Hopefully, authorities, provide some updates and find Sebastian. We hope Sebastian is alive, of course, always. I'm not necessarily sure he's alive, but you never give up hope.
Doesn't this feel very similar to some of the things that we've been witnessing, constantly for the last 5 months?
Yeah, it is. Oh, definitely it is. No, you want to pull over and talk? I'll talk to you right up here. Let's go. Hey, can you get this over?
Oh, and he's out there with Mr. J.T. Olson, who was doing a Repent Christopher Proudfoot protest. And J.T. just happens to say to JLR, "You want to get this interview on camera?"
So we have watched Mr. Proudfoot incessantly lie, change his story multiple times. Okay? Now I'm coming from, let me just say where I'm coming from. Okay, so you want to stand off, you don't have to. I deal with this all the time. I've been doing this for 5 years. I don't know. Okay, so I'm coming at this from a 100% biblical perspective, right? Are you a Christian? Yes, sir. Believe in the Bible? Yes, sir. What does the Bible say about people who lie?
I just want to know what this is doing about.
Well, let's stay on target, man. I'm trying to explain it to you, but you keep redirecting the conversation. So let me ask you again. What does the Bible say about people who lie? I'm getting to a point here.
I'm not coming out here to talk about the Bible. I'm talking about to find out what you were doing to help.
I'm trying to answer that. I'm out here because of the Bible, because of what the Bible
saying, I'm a Christian, I'm a man of God, I go out and I preach the word of God. But you're asking me why I'm doing this and why this is helping find Sebastian. I'm trying to tell you why. Why are you wanting to repent this record? Okay, again, I'm going to go back to my question. You said you're a Christian. I don't want to answer questions. Chris Proudfoot has lies, okay? And the Bible, I'll tell you what the Bible says in Revelation chapter 21, verse 8. It says that all liars will find their place in the lake of fire, okay? Which is the second death. Which, as a Christian, that is hell, okay? That's what Jesus taught when he walked the earth. Now, Chris Proudfoot reports that he's a Christian, but he's lied multiple times. I mean, everybody, it does not take an expert in law enforcement to see that somebody's not telling the truth when you change your story multiple times. So we're out here to call Chris Proudfoot to repentance because it's been over 40 days. Are you expecting Chris Proudfoot to come out here? Let me finish my statement, okay, and then you can ask your next question. Sebastian has been missing for over 40 days, right? We agree on that? Yes. Law enforcement experts have scoured the entire area. Volunteers like myself, I've been out hiking looking. He's been out hiking looking. Everybody's been out searching. Law enforcement did a massive search just the other day. Nothing. He's vanished without a trace. Correct. Now, statistically speaking, when cases like this unfold like this, it's usually somebody that knows the victim, somebody very close to the victim. And the last person that saw Sebastian alive, supposedly, was Katie Proudfoot. Yes or no? Correct. So I would speculate that they would have the answers because there's not been a trace of anything. So we're out here tackling this from a different angle. Okay? So the different angle is, just like law enforcement said, you can't leave any stone unturned. And even Chris Proudfoot himself said everything is on the table. Nothing can be ruled out. And that was with direct questions from Nancy Grace, from other interviewers, that directly asked him, Mr. Proudfoot, do you know what happened to Sebastian?
And that's another example of JLR being right in the middle of a bunch of problematic bullshit going on. JLR knew exactly who the young man that JT was speaking to was. That young man had been on the very first search with JLR and Seth when he went there to film Seth searching for his son. Meanwhile, he didn't step up and say, no, look, he's a good young man. He just really wants to help find Sebastian. All for content and views, isn't it, JLR?
So, JT, what's going on?
Yeah, so this young man pulls up and he says, what is this doing to help find Sebastian? And I tried to explain it to him, and I told him, we're out here because we can't, like the law enforcement said, we can't leave any stone left unturned, right? Every possibility has to be examined here, guys. So we're out here on a biblical perspective. Some of you guys may not agree with our beliefs, and that's perfectly fine. That's between you and God. But we're out here to call Chris Proudfoot to repentance because we've caught him in several lies. And the Bible says that lie is a sin. So this young man didn't like that. He came up here and he talked. I asked him to come up here and talk to me. He came up and talked to me. He walked down the hill, stood over me, and he was kind of shaking and violently trembling like this. I felt a little uncomfortable by that, so I kind of moved up the hill where JR is, and I said, let me get eye level with you, man. We don't have to be confrontational, this and that. Well, I didn't see it, but apparently our other group here saw it. He had his hand on his firearm, on the grip, and he was I don't know if he was doing it to intimidate me into silence or what. And but yeah, that's the case. One of them called the police, and now they're out searching for the suspect. So,
oh wow, they're searching for him.
So now the police want to talk to me, so I'm going to go up here and talk to these gentlemen.
All right.
Yes, give them
Hold on.
And once again, wasting more resources. But sadly, it doesn't even end there. JLR had more even to say and do locally.
To take you the most logical way. We're going to go on a drive. I'm going to show you the route, the distance between here, Texas Roadhouse, and their house. So we're going to go for a ride. We're just going to see the terrain. Reason being is, so far covering this case, did Sebastian actually return home with Katie? Is Katie telling the truth about the timeline about Sebastian once they returned home? You know, Sebastian eventually went to bed after taking the trash out, went to bed, 9 o'clock. Katie says heard thud around 10 p.m. And then midnight, Katie went to bed, woke up around 6 a.m. and Sebastian gone, vanished, disappeared. Is that timeline correct? Did anything transpire between here at Texas Roadhouse and their home, Stafford Court? Did they stop, make any stops, interact with people, meet anyone, go to the convenience store?
Thank goodness law enforcement would be able to answer all of those questions. Definitely not some random YouTuber out there trying to get content and views. The irony that a rumor started shortly after about a potential sighting at a gas station. And wouldn't you know, JLR was involved in that too. But he's not done yet. Let's look at another example of him being very proud of his almost twin-like behavior to BHB, if you ask me.
But guess what, folks? There's two people that are not searching for Sebastian Rogers. Two people. And that would be Katie Proudfoot, Christopher Proudfoot, who are seen, spotted at a campground in Horn Lake, Mississippi. Yogi Bear Campground. I'm going to show you something right here. Check it out.
Wow, this looks awfully familiar too. It's almost like we've watched Sniffers on the Scene, BHB, all of them do this exact same thing. Oh, and how could I forget Nancy Drew? I wonder where Nancy Drew went after T-Rev 757 got booted out of the case. She seems to have been kind of quiet. To the comment section, do you feel like you've watched the same video over and over with just a different character leading the charge? And is it shocking to anybody that JLR was the first one to post videos such as this? So I guess now if your child goes missing and, there's no evidence to determine what exactly happened by law enforcement, I guess YouTubers are just going to play a real life game of Clue out here and find it acceptable to stalk and harass the parents of a missing child. I mean, in my opinion, that's what it looks like this would fall under. Keeping the parents of a missing child under surveillance, driving by their home, their camper. I wonder if they have an instruction manual for how to do this properly. It seems they all got copies
they're at a
of
campground. And apparently, according to my sources, lots of people have been going around there kind of like asking the Proudfoots, yelling out, "Where's Sebastian?" and wondering what the Proudfoots are doing over 100 miles away from where Sebastian was reported missing. Now, Chris Proudfoot supposedly works at St. Jude's Hospital. He publicly announced that. Don't know if he's working now, but Katie's with him. And people are like, well, how is Katie's vehicle with Chris hundreds of miles away when Sebastian went missing in Hendersonville, Tennessee?
Although YouTubers continue to tell people they left home right away, factually, they didn't leave the house until about a month after.
Particularly people that have platforms that can put the information out. I don't think, you could say I maybe put out reckless information by blaming the Proudfoots, and I still think Katie Proudfoot's involved.
I would love to know what the comments think. Do you think JLR's behavior was reckless? The misinformation in itself has been a problem in my opinion. But let's take another look at some of the things he has said or done in this case. We've all complained about Pascal and his dramatics. We'll take a look at this.
Sebastian Rogers, missing 15-year-old, is still missing. And I can say that his parents are under investigation. And like we said yesterday on JLR Investigates with the mother of Madeline Soto, Jen Soto, the mother and stepfather of Sebastian Rogers are toast. They're toast. Come clean.
At least that clip kind of just falls into the corny category. But let's look at another one.
Justice for Sebastian Rogers. Come on in, everyone. Gonna do a little traveling abroad, traveling around Western Texas, but we're gonna talk about Sebastian Rogers, still missing, 15-year-old autistic kid, Hendersonville, Tennessee. And we are going to enjoy some dinner together while we talk about this case. The stepfather and the mother of Sebastian are chicken. They're chicken. They didn't even show up to the vigil, folks. They are, hey, I didn't even want cheese in this. Yeah, I just asked for it deluxe without cheese. Maybe they gave me the wrong one.
Who would have ever known that West Texas is traveling abroad? And that was just another corny display from JLR. In each of those videos, he goes on to make pretty hefty claims. But as you can see, there's a constant theme that he was Team Seth all the way.
Sebastian Rogers talk. Let's talk. He's still missing. 15-year-old young man with autism. Vanished. Last seen with his mom, Katie Proudfoot. Stepdad in the mix here. What's going on? Gonna have some breakfast like we do in the morning and discuss case. Plus, I'm bringing that Louisiana hot sauce to this case. Oh, yeah. We're gonna make this hot and spicy, this segment. Christopher Proudfoot. Katie Proudfoot. Oh, they know. Good morning, everyone. They know. Ooh, we're gonna make this hot. Oh, they know.
Spicing things up with a little misinformation and painting of narratives, if you ask me. And what exactly do they know, JLR?
Morning. Spilling the tea this morning. JLR Investigates. Come on in. Reporting from New Mexico. Come on in. Sebastian Rogers is still missing, folks. And I've been talking to lots of people about this case, getting some insight around the stepfather, about Katie Proudfoot, Christopher Proudfoot. Come on in. We're going to talk, because we're going to talk about alibis. We're going to talk about discrepancies. We're going to talk about where was Christopher Proudfoot.
Seems to me that JLR was attempting to paint some sort of story about Christopher Proudfoot too the entire time. He almost seems giddy to me about spilling this tea, aka misinformation.
Absolutely. I know some people might say in the chat, oh, JLR, you're defending the Proudfoots and going against Seth. And that's not what I'm doing at all. I think Katie Proudfoot is the #1 suspect in this case. But the behaviors of Seth since this happened makes me believe that Seth contributed to what the situation is. To what extent? And law enforcement knows that too. Whether it was when Sebastian was with Seth, bad things were happening, and Katie couldn't take it anymore. Katie's fear of Sebastian going with Seth. I don't know if you guys read the court documents, but none of them. They're not angels, folks. There were some very bad things going on inside the Proudfoot's home and inside Seth's home.
And once again, he's right back to putting little tidbits into the universe to get people to run wild with speculation.
Both people's homes, there were bad things that are happening. And a lot of things, bad things, what Sebastian Rogers was subjected to. Court documents don't lie. It does paint a picture. It does paint a picture. Also like to set some other record straight. I know that Seth Rogers weeks ago was going to have Joe Petito on his channel. I can tell you Joe Petito, there were some people saying Joe backed off because he got threatened and everything. No, Joe didn't back off because he got threatened. He decided not to go on a panel with Seth and Tony because Joe Petito was misled about what the conversation was going to be about. Joe Petito didn't know the backstory. Tony manipulated Joe Petito to come on the show because Joe knew the Caleb Harris side. Tony knew him and kind of solicited for him to come on with Seth. But as soon as Joe did a little research, he's like, no. And I say that because I know the Petito family. I know Gabby's side of the family. That's the truth. I know an individual named Stephanie who works with the Gabby Petito Foundation. I knew the Petitos for years.
And let's go ahead and take a look at what Tony and Seth said about Joe Petito not coming on the show.
So we're gonna get on into it, and again, just can't tell you guys how much those of you that continue to support Seth, we appreciate you. As most of you know, we had a special guest planned for tonight. I had reached out to Joe Petito about a week ago and asked him if he would like to come on and support Seth and Sebastian and talk about Gabby's foundation. And of course, he was, as always, glad to do that, glad to help, and appreciated us asking him to do so.
Unfortunately,
as
a phone call this morning. I guess there's some vile people in the world that, still don't want me to find my son, still putting up opposition, and decided to be, that bad portion of humanity and threaten somebody. So, unfortunately, I understand. I don't want him and his family to suffer from anything. So, I just think it's really vile that people can still do that. I just want to find my son.
So I talked to Seth this morning, and I asked him specifically what Joe had said. He said that Joe had told him that he had been threatened. His family had been threatened. His foundation had been threatened. I had no reason not to believe Seth, but I also wanted to talk to Joe myself. So I reached out to Joe, and I apologized to Joe for anything he was experiencing on our behalf. Asked him more specifically what it was that had happened, and he said that he was threatened to have his personal information put out there, and Gabby's foundation was actually threatened as well. So we're not going to dig any deeper into that. I just would like to say that it saddens me that anybody would threaten his family or his foundation. But Joe, if you're listening or you hear this, again, apologies on my behalf and Seth's behalf that you had to experience that. I'm blown away that there are people that are that determined to keep two grieving fathers from connecting, but we're not going to give that any more airtime, nor are we going to call people out specifically. We're going to move on. But
to my knowledge, Joe Petito has not made a formal statement about him not going on the show.
And Joe Petito wanted nothing to do. He got bamboozled. So people reached out to him and said, whoa, Joe, you might not want to go on. And guess what he did? He didn't go on. One, because why would the Petitos want to be aligned with Seth, who publicly tells himself tells the world he hasn't been cleared, aka a suspect. He's a suspect. And with being a suspect, I don't think anyone wants to be around someone that is considered a suspect in a case.
Tony and Seth weren't the only ones from Seth's team to speak on this. In fact, I think you'll get a great example of how BHB and JLR's drama has been spilling over into a missing child case.
So, of course, JLR and team, along with Barbecue Lady, have not only, this is what they did. They're like, oh, let me tell you, they need to know what type of people they're being associated with. First of all, I'm not a felon. I have not been convicted of felons like Jonathan Lee Riches has been convicted of. He is a piece of shit that has coordinated himself with J is for Justice, another wide open cooter.
I'm not exactly sure what J for Justice private parts have anything to do with Joe Petito not going on Seth's show for an interview. Trigger warning, the upcoming part is vile, disgusting, unnecessary, and disturbing, to say the least. And I remind you again, this is about a missing child and somebody not going on the biological father's channel for an interview. And this is the reaction that Seth's team had to that.
Right? She had an affair on her husband, divorced him, left her children, and then decided to marry another man and decided to go to sleep with Jonathan Lee Riches.
I have heard Jay say that none of that is true, and even if it was, it's not the internet's business, nor should it be used to go at somebody because Joe Petito declined to come on Seth's channel for an interview. Again, she claims that she's advocating on behalf of a missing child.
While I was seeing him. So this woman has a hard-on for Bullhorn Betty because I called her out and got her in trouble with her husband.
I don't see her out here calling you a wide-open cooter.
And of course, she lied to her husband like she lied to her prior husband. So there you have it. This is what J is for Justice said. Joe's out. Shamu is in. Change of programming for tonight. Watch party on JS for Justice Discord. You are a piece of shit, JS for Justice. And trust me, your numbers, I don't care how big you get, when I have enough done, when I'm done with you, you're not going to get 1,300 people viewing you. You are the biggest piece of shit on here that has manufactured so many news articles that it's not even funny. News articles. But let's talk about this, okay? And then listen to this. Now, we got JS for Justice. We have Barbecue Lady out there, which Barbecue Lady's going to get her own in due time.
This is Child Advocacy 101. You know, Betty claims to be such a child advocate and an activist. Sure, Betty.
In due time. And I didn't send. Did I send the other one? Okay, you guys are going to have to wait because I got to send the other one to me. So now we're going to look at the one that was just sent from the mysterious disappearance, from the lead person in the mysterious disappearance of Sebastian Rogers, that Ellie Mae disgusting piece of garbage that thinks she's hot stuff on, you know. This is what Joe Petito said. Do you know that these people reached out to him and told him that they were going to dox his personal information, his home address? They were going to cause problems with his foundation. They didn't tell them about us. They threatened this man.
None of what Betty is claiming has been proven factual.
They threatened this man that if he came on to Seth Rogers' show, they were going to destroy Joe Petito and his foundation. That is what has been alleged here by Joe Petito himself.
And once again, Betty fails to show proof. Like normal, just makes wild accusations.
It's not talking about Seth. It's not talking about Tony. They literally threatened Joe Petito, Jonathan Lee Riches, and crew.
It wasn't that long ago that she was part of Heels on the Ground with Jonathan Lee Riches. I think the group was determined to fail because it should have been named On Your Knees at Chili's.
His just disgusting crew of people. I told Jonathan if he stepped in this case anymore that I was going to sue him. And so now I am going to sue him. I have claims against him for a very long time, and this last little dig from him and his people, I am going to sue him in Pasco County where he lives.
I'm not exactly sure what she's going to sue JLR for, but I think she's going to be a little busy in court herself.
Not Tampa Bay, Pasco County, in Port Richey. That's where the man lives. That's where I'm planning on suing him. And I'm going to be also including Miss Jamie Phillips in that lawsuit as well. So it's going to be, I'm over this nonsense. I'm over this thuggery on this platform. I'm over people trying to destroy an innocent man because they didn't get the attention that they wanted. This man worked very hard to make sure I have to sue people because I'm you are irrelevant. That's why nobody listens to you. Go make your own channel. Let's see how many people listen to your hate-filled rhetoric.
This bitch just said hate-filled rhetoric. Did you just hear her talking about somebody's wide open cooter? And she has the audacity to say somebody else is hate-filled? Oh, Betty.
Probably hardly anybody. Probably hardly anybody. But I'm getting so sick of this thuggery on here. And so Jonathan Lee Riches, let me be very clear to you. I know who's behind all of this, and I'm coming for you, sir. You want to do all this dirty stuff to me? You tried to destroy me. You lied to me for over a year, and you think I'm going to sit here while you have your friends destroy everything that this man is trying to do. He was going to talk about the Gabby Petito Foundation. All you did was hurt Joe in his advocacy for his daughter in such a ruthless and disgusting manner.
I truly don't believe that Joe was probably harmed, or Gabby's foundation was probably harmed by him not going on for an interview. Joe has built an incredible foundation in honor of his daughter.
Threatening him. We have a no tolerance policy here, and I don't have. Somebody get that asshole out. Actually, I'll do it. We have a no tolerance policy here. I want everybody that needs to be hidden. Thank you. We're not gonna deal with this nonsense.
Hey, Betty, it's nonsense here.
J is for justice. You need to keep your legs closed first and foremost. Secondly, you and your misfits need to stop harassing Seth.
Betty, I hate to inform you of this, but just like you claim you can do whatever you want to with that mouth of yours, Jay can do whatever she wants to with her legs, and you don't have a say in it, nor should you be concerned about it.
And as a matter of fact, he's already sent all these people cease and desist letters. I think it's time to start executing some lawsuits against these people that want to just cause him harm for no other purpose than to show that they have the ability to cause this man harm.
Interesting that she's encouraging Seth to start suing people. However, JLR didn't get a cease and desist, and neither did Jay for Justice from Seth Rogers.
It's disgusting. Joe Petito did not deserve to be treated like that. They didn't tell them about what kind of people they were working with. They threatened to harm him and his foundation in order to get him to not show up.
I mean, truly, after seeing this response from you, part of Seth's team, I'm sure he was very glad in his decision. I'm sure Betty learned that technique of child advocacy from some manual out there. But let's get back to what JLR is going to say next.
Vinnie Politan got bamboozled the other night. It feels like, because as the course of the conversation of Seth and Tony, and Seth saying out of his own mouth he hasn't been cleared, and almost Tony soliciting CourtTV to try to get law enforcement to clear Seth, like using CourtTV, it didn't seem like Vinnie Politan wanted anything to do with that. Vinnie Politan's like, yo, I'm out.
I don't think Vinnie was bamboozled, but here's the clip again.
You know, the fact is I'm looking for my son. He's not here. Y'all took my electronics. What more do you want? I mean, do they need my bank records? I mean, you can have them. I mean, I don't understand what I have to do to get cleared.
We're willing to do anything to get cleared, Vinnie.
Go ahead, Tony.
There are resources.
Yeah, we're willing to do anything to work with them to get him cleared, because it does allow us to bring in more resources once he's clear. And you know, if the video evidence, the phone data, and whatever else they may need isn't enough, then we'd simply like us to tell them, you know, why is it that he hasn't been cleared? He did a polygraph test with a well-known FBI polygrapher that Nancy Grace set up, and he passed that with flying colors. So, you know,
we're out of time, unfortunately. Tony, I'm sorry I have to cut you off there. We're out of time, but thank you both for joining us. We'll still look for those answers.
He might have been a little caught off guard, but segments usually have an end time that producers stick to on shows like that.
Okay, we're running out of time. See you later. While Tony's speaking. But what use has Tony been? You know, there was a guy on TikTok, and I actually think the guy's okay. Reading, his name's Craddock, and we talked about him, or Crabtree, Stephen Crabtree. The guy out there, he does a lot of fishermen. He got a big following, whatever like that. Yeah, I was very critical of him when he was aligned with Tony. But he's calling it out as it is, and I believe. And there was somebody really close to them that reached out to me and said, Crabtree was used. He was used by Tony. And put words. And Tony wanted to make it look like Crabtree found something very crazy to use that as justification to solicit funds. I don't know. Whatever reason, right?
We saw earlier in the clips from TikTok that Stephen Crabtree was definitely a part of Tony and Seth's team. But in this clip upcoming, you will see him even apologize for the misinformation that he put out there in Sebastian's case. I genuinely believe that Stephen Crabtree is a good dude that got wrapped up and his emotions played. I think he was definitely manipulated, and I'm glad that he has pulled himself out of the situation too. But I do genuinely believe he did want to help bring Sebastian home. In fact, he's one of very few that I think actually had his heart in the right place. And yes, he was a part of misinformation being spread in this case that could have greatly impacted things. At the end of the day, this is a missing child who is still missing. And we have taken a look at so many different characters and clips that have been involved in spreading misinformation or games that have been played.
Come on here before any lives or anything like that, and I'm sure a couple people might say something about this, but I am a man. When I make a mistake, I'll come here and say it. Now, I had the opportunity to have the the head guy over the criminal investigations unit, Tim Bailey, had the opportunity to talk to him today. And what I will tell you is I made a very, very crucial mistake when misspeaking about the camera footage that they have and all the footage that they have gathered. They have not seen Sebastian past the date of the 26th that he went missing.
He is one of very few that have taken accountability and responsibility for the misinformation that they have helped spread in this case. And for that, I give huge props for him doing this. But unfortunately, Tony has continued to spread misinformation on TikTok.
This is my fault for me making an understanding after talking to him that when we were talking and was talking about all the camera footage and I had asked the question, he was simply stating, no, they have gathered every bit of footage they could from all the cameras that they could, and including the one where, it was said that, he was in the area. They went to those locations and was, where they could get camera footage and got those. I thought that he said that, or took it as a way of like, oh no, yeah, so the day that we had footage that he has seen past that date. Cindy will be able to explain this a lot better. She also talked to him. There's a lot of things, man, that I can say. But first and foremost, I want to apologize to Gator. I don't do that stuff. I'm not a crime talk. I'm going to make a mistake. And I've always said this on every one of my videos. Check my information, do your own research, and you find out. And unfortunately, trying to be helpful, it would be something that would be very bad in the sense of like where it got out to, in the fact that it put hopes out there that were false.
I can't even imagine the emotional roller coaster that these parents of this missing child have been on all along because of people on social media wanting the next click and view and willing to put anything out there in an attempt to make it stick. Meanwhile, there is a missing child still, and his family wants him brought home.
See, because I believe Tony and Seth's goal and objective here is to paint Seth as a grieving father, even though he's a suspect. So whenever Sebastian is found, he can kind of do what Joe Petito's doing after this tragedy with Gabby Petito. Victims' families, they go out there speaking tours and speak and, engagements and whatnot, maybe books, who knows. Funds, foundations, Sebastian Rogers Foundation by Seth Rogers. The problem is, I don't think it's going to work on this particular case. Reason being, the allegations against Seth Rogers are so egregious, a reasonable person can't rally behind that.
Meanwhile, JLR and Magnolia rallied in full support of Seth Rogers from jump. But he's also not including what these allegations supposedly are. Again, dangling carrots in front of you and hoping that the subs eat it all up and run wild with speculation and theories.
So the only thing you could do is put it out like it never happened or omit that information. Always in these cases, always things end up is something we don't know about the backstory comes to the surface, and then it just changes the whole game of the case. No, I actually like that Crabtree guy. I think he's he's just a guy out there. He makes his videos, and I don't have a problem with that guy. I do believe that Tony Mathis abused him, but if you listen to Crabtree lately, he just speaks out, just trashes Tony. But it's the truth. It's the truth.
JLR is going to say anything about Tony is the truth because obviously, as you saw, there was personal issues between the two of them. And I didn't go into much showing on JLR's side of what he claimed about Tony, but you can go look for yourself and see. There's a whole lot.
Another thing I think very strange about this case is Chris Proudfoot. Now, Proudfoot's Chris, he started going to work he started going to work. I don't think Chris Proudfoot was at that home around the 25th and the 26th. I do think Chris Proudfoot is also a player in this whole case.
And once again, I'm going to take you back to Court TV. You can listen to Seth's own words. You tell me what you hear Seth say.
Why is that?
Because every time I want to speak to her, I'm going to have to speak to Chris. Chris wasn't there. I don't know why he needs to be involved in a conversation about what happened that night.
Seth just said Chris wasn't there.
Where Chris Proudfoot put a lot of pressure on Katie about Sebastian. Child, Chris couldn't take Sebastian. Wanted him gone. That talk stuff. But doing the actual deed, I don't think Chris Proudfoot did it. I don't think Chris Proudfoot did it.
Did what? We don't even know what happened. We don't know where Sebastian is or what happened. And all this talk stuff that you're talking about, JLR, exactly what's the source of that? Your local sources on the ground, JLR?
But I think he's another contributing factor in this. Communications, whatnot, whatever. But he went back to work. Seth Rogers has still not been back to work. Why? I know people say medical, but how long? How long is he even allowed to go back to work? Has anyone asked the question? I know Seth says medical, he can't go back to work, but has anyone asked the question that maybe he can't go back because he's a suspect in the disappearance of Sebastian, and that wouldn't look good being a so-called law enforcement? Has anyone asked the question? Maybe he's suspended and not allowed to go. Maybe he's told to stay home until you're clear. That's why they're begging to clear, but they don't want people to know that. So what he says is medical, shoulder. I got shoulder problems.
Well, according to BHB, he's a disabled grieving father. And I don't think anybody really knows why Seth hasn't returned to work.
Chris said that he got Seth that job at corrections. He's not law enforcement. They said it out of their own mouth, though. Tony put it out like he's law enforcement. Oh, Seth is law enforcement. We back the blue. We back the blue. We back the blue.
Seth himself has always said that. Here's a clip.
And you are in law enforcement, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So, what's the solution here to find Sebastian? Do you know? Not a peep from Robin Rogers lately. And
is distracted driving not a thing in Florida either?
Another thing, too, I want to know is who's the so-called PI that Seth has? Because I think that's a scam, my opinion. And I say a scam is because, listen, I have a lot of sources on the ground in Hendersonville, Tennessee. I communicate with people regularly about this case. Me and Magnolia, a lot of people.
Let's take a refresher about your sources.
Boots on the ground there, and I was able to establish connections with people, like the neighbors of the Proudfoots, who I communicate with, former associates of the Proudfoots, who I communicate with, community members, who I now communicate with, and they, I built a network to be able to understand, and moving forward, see what develops out of this case. Hopefully, I haven't heard of a search. I haven't seen a search. Private searches. Why in the world would you want to have private searches? And who in the world would want to have a private search with someone considered a suspect? Considering that even though when they were doing searches at other places far from the Proudfoots' home, it just seems like these searching places, in my mind, was a red herring. They were down there in the lake. They were south of Hendersonville on that big lake, on a federal property, searching there where there was a tornado. Why there? Why? Why there?
You should be able to answer some of these questions, JLR, since you were the one filming some of these initial searches.
I am at the Natchez Trace State Park, Tennessee. In front of me here, I have Seth Rogers, the father of missing 15-year-old Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers. Sebastian, 15 years old, has been missing since February. He's been reported missing since February 26, 2024. He has still not been found. It's been over 3 weeks now. I have Seth here in the center in front of me, the father of Sebastian. On the left, I have Jaden, a volunteer, and on the right, I have Mr. Jones. And we're out in the park today. Seth, how are you? How's everything going?
Tired.
We're here at the park here. What's going on at the park here?
I'm hoping that somebody listened to me and I told them drop my son off. There's not a lot of cameras here, and it gets a lot of traffic, so I figured I'd drive here and do some searching.
Just now, JLR finds it to be odd
when law enforcement said nothing about those areas. It just seems like the searches are just away from where you should search. Searches should be close to the Proudfoot's home within a mile radius. Oh, Proudfoot's home. Not these weird places 5-10 miles away. Why there? But Seth, doing these searches, now he says he's doing it privately, is a bunch of hogwash. My sources tell me Tony, Mathis, and Seth agreed to meet with a media outlet about a month or so ago, and they did a photo op, and they got a boat loaned to them, and they put the boat in the water. They started filming Seth driving in a boat, and that's it.
And upcoming is a clip from one of the channels that Seth promotes. He also holds a moderator wrench in this channel.
Seth isn't using sonar. If y'all think that Seth is the one that's in that boat using the sonar, he's not using sonar. That video that we see on the news was a prop. It was just them getting him to, he's riding in the boat for the news footage. But in the actual search for Sebastian, right, that because it was for the video, but if he's not doing that, in the actual search, it's a photo op. Thank you. Yes, exactly. The actual search there's experts with him.
So even the channels that are extremely pro Seth admit that that was a photo op and not a search by Seth Rogers.
There was not a lot of people there doing any searches. And they used that to say, well, due to the safety of the searchers, why would the searchers be threatened? I didn't ever know searchers be threatened.
And once again, I'm including the clip of the news segment that JLR is referencing when Seth and Tony did the photo op in the boat.
A father refuses to give up on his missing son. 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers disappeared nearly 5 months ago, and his father, Seth, is still searching. Good evening and welcome to News 2 at 6. I'm Bob Mueller.
And I'm Haley Bogus. Sebastian's father told News 2's Caitlin Quisenberry they're operating this like a recovery effort, even though he believes Sebastian is still alive.
Memorial Park was one of the first places Seth Rogers tells me he searched for his son, Sebastian. He says this place is Sebastian's favorite.
Almost 2 months ago, this bridge was lit up in Sebastian's favorite color, green, in hopes of his safe return home. At that time, he had been missing for 2 months. Today, the search continues, almost 5 months later.
People think that we're not searching anymore. Well, they can think whatever they want. Our searches are private.
Seth tells me after a herniated disc surgery, it is back to boots on the ground. He says today, over 40 searchers, vetted by his private investigator, will be eliminating locations Sebastian could be in Middle Tennessee.
Now I don't really have much stopping me from getting out there and doing what I need to do.
There's a refocus. We're trying to zero in on more specific information that we are gathering.
Seth tells me his search parties have become invite-only due to chaos at previous searches.
They're private because we learned last time. We had people following my searchers around that were just handing out flyers, and it doesn't bode well for people who are trying to help to be put into hostile situations.
But he says the goal today is not to find Sebastian.
The search that we're doing today is a recovery effort, and I'm praying that we don't find him.
Seth says he believes his son is alive, but he added some people still don't know Sebastian is missing.
We have to continue to hand out flyers until everybody knows.
Seth and Tony tell me they have one unanswered question for the Sumner County Sheriff's Office.
We think it's a valid question. We think it's a fair question. And that question is, are you any closer today to finding Sebastian Rogers than you were February 26th?
And for Seth, the answer to that question is no.
My son's not here, so we're nowhere closer.
If you have seen Sebastian or have information about his whereabouts, call the Sumner County Sheriff's Office or the TBI. Those numbers are listed on our website, WKRN.com.
Who was threatening people was the United Cajun Navy when they were in there threatening people that were trying to search. Wasn't just outside people thinking, oh yeah, we're just gonna start threatening people that are trying to find Sebastian. That's a bunch of BS. It's a bunch of nonsense. It needs to be called out.
JLR went toe-to-toe with the United Cajun Navy, but there's no proof that United Cajun Navy were threatening anybody. Even CJ claimed he was being followed, but he's scared of his own shadow. And the funniest thing is all these guys film nonstop for content, but none of them were able to capture people following them or these supposed threats.
These private searches need to be called out because there is none. There's none. Now, I'm not saying tomorrow there won't be one. Now that I called it out, maybe they'll start having private searches or open searches. There ain't no searches going on. Nothing.
That's not true, JLR. Sniffers on the scene is there. In action. Searching and digging. Didn't you know?
It's time for boots on the ground here in Hendersonville, Tennessee. So we searched for Sebastian Rogers missing over 5 months. Never stop searching. Once you lace them up, some people call them the poop kickers. Bring him home. That. Let's go.
I apologize in advance for this camera angle. I told you somebody was still there searching and digging up things, JLR. Neat sniffers in the air. He also can smell the air. He sniffs quite a bit. And he does a lot of bloop and around. And I am not responsible for any eyesight issues from the previous clip.
So I don't know where that garbage comes from and why people would put that information out there about searches. Another thing too is, how many PIs does Seth Rogers need? Because apparently in the last interview he gave with CourtTV, he says he has a female PI. Who is that female PI?
And once again, here is the clip JLR is referencing.
Oh, my question right now is anyone still searching for Sebastian? Let me bring in my special guest, someone I know is still searching. Sebastian's father, Seth Rogers, is with us, and also joining us, the Rogers family spokesperson, Tony Mathis. Thank you both for being here. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and the opportunity to speak about Sebastian. Seth, let me begin with you. Is anyone still searching for your missing son?
I am. I have a private investigator that's still working on it. She conducts her searches in private. She has her own volunteer base. We're not going to stop until we find it.
In my opinion, it's the same lady that runs the tip line.
Or is it a lie? Or does it have a female PI? What about all the other PIs? Before, he had 2 PIs. Apparently, he said he had fired them because they're not on board. He had Chloe. He had Heather Michelle Cohen. Now, I was very critical of Heather Michelle Cohen. I like Chloe. I was critical of Heather Michelle Cohen. But I don't think she's a bad person. I think a lot of people like her. And she actually would respond to me. We'd be communicating a little bit in email. Seth got rid of them. Boom, boom, out of there. Well, you know why? Because I believe they were digging and prying. And Seth didn't want the prying. Seth didn't want things about him out there.
The original claim was that there was 4 PIs. However, we only knew about the 2, Chloe and Heather Cohen, who were both eventually let go by Seth Rogers. I wonder if Heather's still trying to figure out how the phone call got leaked. I still find it completely astonishing that a PI can't figure out how they intentionally leaked a phone call. Shocker.
Which I feel is relevant to this case. It's relevant to the case. Seth, going all the way back to California, all the way back to, what's it called, Kingsland, Georgia. Now, I don't want to...
JLR, you're not very sly when you attempt to dangle information out here and get people to run with it or look into it.
The way I want to say this, I want to be careful with what I say this. But it's also no secret when Seth and Katie got together, age-wise. It's no secret. You know how old Seth was when he was with Katie.
For full transparency purposes, I am including a clip of Seth's own words from March 18th, 2024.
I've known Katie since she was 12 years old. Started dating when she was 18. I'm 10 years older than her, and I never knew her to be a swinger.
Again, I know there will be some strong opinions in the chat. Does it have a direct correlation to Sebastian being missing? That is what I'm unsure of. But a lot of creators just say things without providing proof of said claims. In my opinion, that is a JLR technique quite often.
You know how old. In some states, there is no statute of limitations when it comes to things like that. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. But I think these individuals, players, and participants in this case need to step forward and tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
This is where I'm extremely thankful that law enforcement is involved in this case, because we don't have to determine what is pertinent to Sebastian's disappearance. Law enforcement will weed through all of this noise.
I mean, think about the clickbaity type of things they put out, like Seth and Tony, like, we're going to release CPS documents, and then they never do.
Speaking of clickbaiting things, JLR.
Well, there is CPS documents out there, folks, and they're pretty bad, old ones. But none of us have ever seen the Tennessee ones.
Who's leaking old CPS records, I wonder?
Will they be leaked? And another strange thing I would like to say is when it comes to the Proudfoot, Chris Proudfoot, how in the world did he get summer custody of Faith? Considering that a child out of their household went missing. How in the world does that even happen?
Obviously, a judge's ruling allowed that.
Unless law enforcement really on Sumner County's went to bat for Chris and Katie. It just seems like law enforcement is rallying around Chris and Katie. It seems like that. But we heard the things. I mean, belt and all types of things. So what Chris was using, I think it's child A, right? I think it's bad, but it's just weird. Just weird that Proudfoots say that they have regular communication with law enforcement. Seth doesn't. It's weird that I haven't heard anything about the Proudfoots electronics being seized, devices, electronics being seized and not being returned to them. He's saying his stuff has been seized. It's awfully weird that Proudfoot, Chris, gets custody of a child for the summer when Sebastian is missing. I think that's weird. But then it makes me wonder, like, is law enforcement looking at a whole other direction except, not at the Proudfoots and it's someone else that they're looking at?
And again, we don't know what is factually still in possession of law enforcement and what is not. But we know, according to Seth's words, his phone was returned. And in my opinion, all JLR is encouraging is further speculation and wild theories to be spread.
Because, again, Katie has some legal issue that she's filing, and law enforcement were there with her, like backing her. But I think there's more to that. That's what I'm saying. I think there's some criminal charges coming out.
Factually, we don't know what capacity law enforcement was there, if they were there with the Proudfoot family.
So all we got to do, I think what we should do with this particular case, ladies and gentlemen, is pay attention the next couple weeks, because I think some stuff is going to happen. Momentum. 6-month anniversary coming up. But we don't know. I think we only know 20% of this. Though clues have been revealed. Does anyone out there feel like Seth Rogers is a good parent? And if you do feel like that, say why. Is it because he says he has to find Sebastian on national TV makes him a good parent?
And once again, I said similar things, that the month of August was going to be very interesting. Unfortunately, there's still no updates in the disappearance of Sebastian. It is so nice to see a family stand up for themselves and say enough. We don't deserve this, and we are not going to continue to go through this. I think that will be the most shocking updates over the next month or so.
Is that why? I mean, because you see a guy on TV with select interviews, select things said, and say this, that, and the other to make you have a soft spot. I don't know. I don't know. I get this bad vibe. But I'm in the position here. My mind just jumbles over. Like, first, my mind just shifts all over the place with this, because it's like every scenario is popping up, and it's just strange. This boy needs to be found, and how much longer is this going to last? Because I certainly hope it doesn't turn into a Summer Wells case. But I think Craddock might be I'm the new sheriff in town, Craddock, and I'm going to make some things happen. I'm going to start subpoenaing things, or I'm going to start grand jurying things, or whatever like that. Who knows? Maybe the feds do take the case. Now, Seth and Tony wanted the FBI to take both of the case. And in fairness to Seth and Tony, I mean, they're pretty much begging for law enforcement to take it up a higher level.
The TBI and the FBI have been assisting in this case.
Does that mean they want to take it up to a higher level to elevate it? Because that's the word they use, elevate the case. I mean, would a guilty party want to do that? Would a guilty party say, no, I want the FBI to investigate somebody with bigger resources, harsher penalties? I don't know. Make it make sense. Because I don't know what makes sense anymore when it comes to this case. But Seth needs to start telling the truth. Now, who's he going to speak to next? He talked to CourtTV. I don't know if CourtTV is going to come back and bring him back because it seems like Vinny got bamboozled. Ashley Banfield seems to have a soft spot for Seth.
I wonder why Nancy Grace stopped following this case.
I know if the arrest happens, you'll probably hear it here first. I mean, pretty much, again, but there's a lot of things we don't know. Although there's things I know. There is things I know. Sometimes I have to be careful with my opinion. Don't want to offend some people. Don't want to get myself in some hot water. But it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. We know the behaviors of certain individuals. We know. We know.
I think you've muddied the waters enough in this case, haven't you, JLR? But you're continuing on. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate you watching this. I hope you are able to see how similar a lot of these creators have moved throughout the course of this case. Unfortunately, there is still a 15-year-old by the name of Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers that is missing from Hendersonville, Tennessee. And while YouTubers and TikTokers continue to play games in this missing child's case, the family has been put through absolute hell. I think multiple things can be true at one time. I think that creators can exploit grieving family members. And I also think that family members can fall into spots of desperation and willingness to get aligned with some of the worst, in my opinion, to do whatever they can to find answers. We all have our opinions at the end of the day, and none of us, unfortunately, know what happened to Sebastian. Otherwise, he would no longer be missing. But one thing I know for sure is his family misses him and wants him home, all of them. Currently, there is no evidence to even speculate that the family members are in any way, shape, or form involved in his disappearance. A lot of these content creators use the exact same techniques and how, in my opinion, they exploit these tragedies time and time again. And then, unfortunately, in my opinion, they leverage their own personal drama between creators to create noise and muddy the water in these active, ongoing cases. In my opinion, JLR, BHB, and even Truck Stop Tony are all cut from the same cloth. They have all created nothing but noise in this missing child's case. And unfortunately, I know that it's not even remotely close to being over yet. But once again, I am so incredibly happy to see the families say enough is enough and stand up for themselves. I will continue to try and do my part and correct the misinformation and the intentional games that creators are playing at the expense of this missing child. Thank you once again for watching. I hope you saw something that you might not have noticed before in this video with it laid out like this. But creators who exploit these families going through their worst moments deserve to be named and shamed. And someday, I'm hopeful that laws will actually catch up to start protecting the victims of these tragedies. Victims have rights, and it's about time we start recognizing that. I hope you all have a great day, and please, if you know anything, see anything about Sebastian Rogers, please call 1-800-TBI-FIND. Thank you.